Hey there guys, it's Metro, and today we are back. Patch 8.1 recently just came out, Tides of Vengeance, and a lot of undocumented changes to dungeons, and even the documented changes that we knew about for months really had an unexpected twist on some, not only the meta, but how the game is played in dungeons outright. So I want to make a little video on this. Before I do, I just want to say that I'm still extremely sick. Probably shouldn't be doing this, but I love WoW and I love YouTube too much, so we're going to do it. Regardless, hope it doesn't cause too many problems in the videos. Anyway, so one of the coolest things that has, always been a part of the community is how, serious players gravitate towards the collection of information and kind of the science of information. So if you guys aren't familiar with the competitive WoW Reddit, there's been a lot of threads like this, a lot of posts like this. It used to be a much better place. Now a lot more complaining on here. It doesn't seem very competitive at times, but regardless, this is a really, really good post. All right, so there's two things that are going to be in the description. You should definitely check them out. You don't necessarily have to look at them right now, but regardless, in there, you should definitely be looking at this. I'm going to go through every single one of these undocumented changes. And in the background, we have Temple 13, which obviously not that aggressive of a keep, but there's a lot of changes to Temple, so I was happy to show some of them off in the video so you could see them as they go, like people dying on this first boss is also a big part of that, okay? So we're just going to go through the entire list on this, and then we'll talk about some other topics as well. So the first thing on here is a general tab. Laser Matrix is again breaking CC. We found this out last night on Mythic Zekvaz, but again, this is a bug. This is not a change. This is something that obviously was bugged in the past, and they fixed it, so it will be fixed again, I'm sure. Either way, Laser Matrix will be dead in a couple months anyway, thank God. It's the stupidest. I'm glad it's over. So regardless, that is probably not intentional. Unable to pre-pull infest with D&D before keys. That should not really be surprising to anybody, and I'm a little disappointed that people would get upset about something like this. It does really make me worry about the credibility of the people who are doing Mythic Plus. If something like that, which is clearly not intended, when that gets fixed, people are upset about that. But regardless, if you're not aware, what was happening was you could basically pull the mobs in zero. Basically, zero would affect the Mythic Plus. It was like if you cleared out the entire zero, the Mythic Plus would all respawn. And if you dropped D&D before you started the dungeon, they would respawn into your D&D and aggro. And then if they had infested, they would not spawn with it because they would do it. They would come before the dungeon began. So it's a complete exploit. It should have never been in the game, but it was, and people were, obviously using it to great success. So now the third point here is overall dungeon scaling may have been messed with, and I've heard a lot of people say this. Even people from the stream have messaged me about this. I don't know. I haven't. I did one dungeon. I've just been too sick. I haven't had time. I've done one dungeon, and it did not seem like a problem at all. People in the other Discord I was in was talking about that they were doing an 11 and it had like the damage like modifiers for like a 15 or a 16 or something like that, like 3 to 4 modifiers higher than it should have been. So my and other people's immediate response was that they're accidentally using Season 2's difficulty. Like if you're not aware, when Season 2 begins, all the dungeons get commensurately harder. Like effectively, whatever a 10 is now, that's going to be like probably like an 8. Or no, maybe even more like a 6. You know what I mean? They're going to be making things harder like they did in Legion. About halfway through Legion, they did this. The difference in Legion, they made 15 the cap for a while. That's not happening in Season 2. We're just going right to keeping 10 and making everything drop 30 item levels higher. And then the difficulty being commensurate with that. So whether it's unconfirmed, I don't know. I assume that was the bug. If other people have reported that, let me know. I've done one key, again, very small sample size, did not have this problem. If this is the case and this was supposed to be as hard as like a 17, I didn't see it. So regardless, that's not something I've seen. I think it might have been fixed though by now. So let's keep moving. We got Freehold. The pig in Freehold now jumps to a random spot. Used to be on that skull. We put a skull down. It was like this pile of bones. This is a great change, if you ask me. This was something that, knowing the strategy felt really rewarding the first few times you ever did it. And then basically it turned into this thing where I was like, all right, this is no longer part of the dungeon. And if people don't do it right, they're idiots. You know what I mean? It's like, and I know that's a very elitist mentality to take, but I don't think that was the point of the pig mechanic. It's like, if you can just have 5 people click it the second it spawns every time, they wouldn't have put it in. They would have just avoided it, you know? So clearly there was meant to be a little bit more hectic catching of this pig. And, you know, even though maybe it sucks for the player, I think it is good for the game overall. It also says sharks move slower. I'm assuming that is on the second or the third boss, whatever you want to consider. The shark boss, obviously, shark bait. I'm assuming that is on that boss. I haven't done Freehold yet, obviously, but that's the only place that I'm aware there are sharks. So if that's the case, that's a good change. The shark mechanic was really punishing. Made that fight the hardest one in the dungeon. And, well, not even really. I mean, it was a hard fight, but there's a lot of hard fights in there. So I think that's more appropriate for Freehold. Next up is Siege of Boris. Hadal Dark Fathom's title surge now properly scales. What the hell? Scales. I have no idea. I don't know what that means, but sure. Okay, properly scales. What was bugged before? You guys let me know. I don't really know. I have no interaction with that whatsoever. So if you guys know anything about that, let me know. Also, it says Destructor Tentacle aggroes earlier than usual. Again, don't know what that means. Would have to see some type of evidence of it happening to understand it, probably. But whatever. If it's aggroing earlier than usual, when you start the fight or when you get over to the platform, if it's when you get over to the platform, that's probably a good thing. To kill those things a little quicker, to be able to attack those things a little quicker, that's not a bad thing. But of course, I don't know what it means, so you guys will have to let me know. Temple of Sethralis, obviously the recording that we're doing here. This is the one that really is very interesting. A lot of changes in Sethralis. So the lightning trap, the whole dumbass maze-looking lightning areas, those are considerably easier to deal with. It says they move slower, but I don't think that's just it. I think they reduce the frequency of the secondary part. So if you did this on normal, there's only like one set of orbs, and then if you do it on Mythic or higher, there's two sets, and they both moved at the same speed, interacted with each other in very, very ways that you just could not deal with properly. Sometimes there was absolutely no way to not either wait, like have to sit there and wait for them, or to get knocked back. That should have never been in a Mythic Plus, honestly. I don't like stuff like that. Just completely random stuff that you can't outplay. So after I did Temple of Sethralis, like you'll see in this video, considerably better. It's a lot more fun, and we don't have any problems with it. But somebody actually dies in it. I think you'll see this later in the video. But somebody actually dies in the second part. Like, they get destroyed. I don't know if it's quacking. I don't know if it's the balls. I don't know what. So maybe they made them hit harder. But regardless, I'm happier that it's a lot easier to dodge. Galvats, that's the third boss. Lightning has a new visual, and pillars are more randomized. So we saw this on the beta. If you're watching the stream we did on the beta, this is a big deal, honestly. The new visual makes it a lot easier to see, and it does look better, honestly, in my opinion. And the pillars being more randomized, I don't know. I'm not sure how I feel. I did it. You'll see it in this video. It's like there's two right next. In fact, there's one in front of the other. Like there's one behind one. And it's like, okay, well, now you have to soak. It's impossible, right? You cannot just soak one there. So I don't know. I think that's probably better. But it is going to get more dangerous at times. Less dangerous at other times, though. So I don't know. Now, the biggest change here is Avatar of Sethralis is now a 2-phase encounter. You can now heal the boss to 70 on the first intermission. So this is going to, take at least 2 minutes off the boss? I mean, I don't know. This boss was so long. Absolutely hated this boss. Always did. Always will. And, I think it's a great indication of what BFA Mythic Pluses are. They're trying to find more unique encounters, but this one was a bit too unique, so I'm definitely happy that they nerfed it. This is a sizable nerf. Snake Charm is now an interruptible cast. Now, that is a very odd change. I guess that's a good thing, because if you don't have stuns or grips, then you just couldn't deal with it, but a lot of people are, celebrating it, especially in this thread. They're like, oh, this is the best change. It's like, well, as a Blood Death Knight, I never cared about in the first place, but I guess if you're not the Blood Death Knight, then you can't really be gripping or stunning these mobs constantly. And now, here's the one that you might have seen in the very beginning of the video. Cyclone Strike deals increased damage significantly. I actually didn't include this because I didn't think to record it out of the gate. But we pulled the boss. I got one shot by the Cyclone Strike. Normally, I would just not even move from it. It doesn't do any damage. It's Blood DK. I got one shot. Literally died 100% overkill. It was overkill. So you want to dodge the Cyclone Strike. I think it was probably just undertuned in the past, because if it's a mechanic like that, although it's unfortified, I don't know, it does a lot of damage now. You got to dodge that. So that's Temple. Big changes to Temple. Obviously, huge changes. You got to see more of those in the video. But regardless, we're going to keep moving here. Shrine of the Storm. Damage debuff goes on healer only. I guess got to believe that to be the final boss. that's a pretty big change, and obviously a lot of people were like kind of gimmicking it. I don't know. I feel like this is how it should have always been. I don't think they ever included thoughts into getting it on damage dealers. Like, it's just ridiculous. It's clearly for the healer. It always picks the healer, first. It always seemed to go to the healer regardless. So it seems stupid that it ever went to damage dealers, in my opinion. So I'm definitely happy. I think that's just the intended change, and people who are, I don't know, I'm not going to call it like, exploiting, because obviously it wasn't, but I don't think that was how the fight was ever meant to be done. So if you were relying on that for the fight to be done properly, then yeah, I think maybe the key or the boss itself is just a little too hard, and they should probably address that. Now, here's the one that's setting the world on fire, boys. Underrot. Blood Matrons leading to the first boss now have True Sight. This is probably the biggest change on this list, and the one that I am actually the most happy about, even though most people would be the least happy about it. I absolutely love this change. I hate skipping out of the gate. 3, 2, 1, skip. I do not like this, especially in Underrot. I actually just made a video on my thoughts on the Underrot skips and all that, and then a week later it becomes irrelevant. It's so silly. But regardless, I'm very, 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 very happy about this. Now that we are not going to be skipping this amount of trash early, especially since people on that video willingly admitted that they skip it not because it's difficult, but because it's just optimal to do when it leads to completely suboptimal situations later in the dungeon. Like, if a mistake is made, I just don't want to do that in pugs, man. And I sympathize for those doing like 46s or whatever keys, plus 46. Well, you guys now have to do it a little differently, and that's regrettable. But yeah, I definitely do not like skipping like that, man. I really don't. I would much rather skip it at the end, and I'm glad now that it's a selfish thing to be happy about, but that's the way I feel about it. King's Rest. You are now unable to CC the Berserkers. I don't know that they're not undead. No, are they undead? I'm not actually sure. I think they are undead. I don't know if that means you can't mind control them anymore either. Again, I haven't done it, but people are already saying on teaming week, this is crazy, this is impossible. But I mean, they're called Berserkers, to be fair, right? I mean, the name kind of lives up to itself. So again, they're a mob that is very dangerous, and I'm not going to say that I will probably struggle with these mobs and die more to them, but I do think that, there's some mobs that you do want to maintain the danger on, and, there's mobs that are not CCable in Mythic Plus Dungeons, so this is one of them. I guess I'm fine with it. We'll see. I don't know if you can mind control it. If you can still mind control it, then DK gets even stronger, but I'd imagine if you can't shackle or whatever, root them, then you probably cannot mind control them either. Anyway, Crest Manor. The route used after the Crest boss to glitch the ads has been removed. Great. This is one that I actually never figured out on my own. I saw a lot of people talk about it, but I never did it. Yeah, I mean, this was the same thing in Darkheart Thicket. It should have never been in the game, so hard to say that I'm sad. It's not something that should have been part of the game, and it's obviously going to be removed eventually. Atal Dazar. This is another one I'm happy about. Unable to use Warlock Gate to fly through the wall to Totem Boss. Again, another one that probably was not intended. I hate this stupid route that people are doing. I hate this convoluted insistence on skipping these packs in really dumb ways, really overly convoluted ways. I think people are way too concerned with how the top groups are doing them, and it really translates down to pugging. But ultimately, it doesn't affect me. I don't do this. I'm never going to do this. I think pulling the right side is always the better option with the Blood DK, and I play a Blood DK, so no problems there. Regardless, a lot of Warlock Gate changes came in Legion, so I don't think anybody should be surprised. And probably the one that is the biggest, might be the biggest change for actual bosses. Jess Howless has a 90% damage reduction while channeling Rallying Cry. So we actually had this happen last week on stream. Kind of got a little frustrated by it. People were kind of flaming me because I interrupted the channel. To me, again, when I look at things, like theoretically, I think that cast has to be interrupted. Why would you not interrupt it? But, I guess from like a min-max point of view, it's better to just let him empower things that are trivial and not do mechanics that, in my opinion, are very easy to deal with, but I guess are, DPS losses. So, empirically, it was faster to not interrupt that. And again, that was never intended. I don't think Blizzard was ever looking for that to be the thing. When a mechanic like that is a long channel like that, it's supposed to be detrimental to the group, and now it definitely is. So you will have to interrupt that, and you will have to do the boss the way it's supposed to be done. But realistically, it's not that hard of a boss. Maybe on like Necrotic or certain weeks it can be hard, but really not a problem if you ask me. I always interrupt it. Anyway, but more so, even more, gets even more interesting. Picking up barrels on Knight Captain no longer slows you. Possibly spawns more barrels now. They don't really know, I guess, for now. We'll find out as the time goes on. The good thing about this is you'll probably see this, and maybe this page will be different too. There'll be more things added, but regardless, this is a really big deal. So again, this is definitely the dungeon that has the biggest changes to bosses. Picking up barrels is the thing that almost nobody ever does. It's a real pain in the ass, and honestly, it just didn't feel like it was ever worth it. Like, I felt like it was better to just roll the dice and move from them than it was to constantly move them around because of how slow you are. So it's a great change. Absolutely makes the fight more fun, makes the fight more interesting, and yeah, I don't know about spawning more barrels, but regardless, I don't think it makes the fight any harder. But then the final boss, unable to hide in the Overseer's hitbox for cross ignition. Again, probably not intended, considering the animation does not suggest it. But it was something that I was getting great benefit out of. Obviously, when I was standing there, it was kind of a free pass to tank him up against a wall. As you guys have seen, I made multiple videos on that dungeon's boss, talked about it a lot on the stream. Very difficult to tank him where people ask you to tank him. When you're dealing with that, the camera problems, and having to move laterally, very, very difficult. So this fight is going to get a lot harder for me. Doesn't really change for really any ranged or people who aren't doing that already, but again, one of those changes that I just don't think was ever intended. Now, there's another document in the description that there's a lot of stuff on it. This is the description of it is bugs, issues, and concerns. Now, this is also from 8.0. Let's go ahead and I'm just going to state publicly that most of these things are not bugs, issues, or concerns. I don't really understand this. Like a lot of this. So the orbs, Snake Gauntlet, this is in Sethral's. The orbs have a chance of being stuck underground and despawning, thus depleting your key as you are unable to proceed. That is a bug, issue, or concern, right? Pretty much a bug, issue, and concern. After that, all mobs inside of this gauntlet apply necrotic. That's not a bug, issue, or concern. That's intentional. That they want, like, you know what I mean? It sucks, but that's not a bug or an issue or a concern. Like, this is part of the dungeon. This is part of the difficulty of the dungeon. There's a lot of stuff like this. Like, for example, the Freehold one on this forum. I don't know who made this. I don't, but it's kind of questionable, some of this stuff. Regardless, for example, it says, if you do the RP event before the dungeon starts in 0, it'll be activated in Mythic Plus. All right, so obviously this is something that we talked about a lot on stream. I do not condone exploits like this, but I understand a lot of people are doing it for benefit to the key. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if this was actually on the other forum, too. I'm kind of surprised it wasn't fixed, and maybe it's a more difficult change than it sounds, but it sounds like a no-brainer to me. I don't think zeros should ever affect the Mythic Plus, and I don't think that's intended, so I don't really know about all that. I feel like that should have been changed in 8.1, and has it been? I don't know. I haven't tried it. But regardless, there's a lot of stuff on this that is 8.1, new 8.1 bugs, which are nice. But then there's a lot of stuff that it's like, the dungeon is hard. It's like, yes, we are aware that the dungeon is hard. So, I don't know. Not a big fan of stuff like that when people make difficult, like clearly intended difficulties out to be kind of fake difficulty. But on top of that, I did want to talk a little bit about Blood DK. Blood DK's nerfs, quote-unquote nerfs, really are minor, very, very, very minor. Both Blood and Brewmaster, top 2 tanks, pretty much outright in the game before the patch, got nerfed. And it wasn't very substantial. They didn't get massive nerfs, but it does add up. And the buffs to the other tanks, I think, really brings people a lot closer together. So, like most improved tanks, clearly Prot Warrior. Second would be Bear, of course, Bear. And Vengeance of Paladin kind of just stayed pat. They didn't really get any big changes. But Brewmaster and Blood obviously got nerfed. And the nerf was not very big. I cannot reiterate this enough. Very minor nerf, especially Blood. The Bone Storm change basically doesn't affect me. I very rarely find myself fighting more than 5 mobs that I actually am relying on Bone Storm to keep myself alive on. And the armor change, it makes me basically just do more healing. I mean, that's kind of the net gain of it. The only change is you're going to see it on a fight like maybe Feated Devourer. Somebody actually brought this up in one of the channel, previous videos. They said on Mythic now, you're just going to get slaughtered by this boss. The extra 200 or some armor you lost is massive as a Blood DK in that fight. And hey, that's perfectly understandable. I totally understand that. It is a nerf in that situation. But for me, I don't feel like, I feel like I lost 200 armor. I'm not exactly sure how much armor I had. I can probably go through old streams to see, but I have like over 4,000 still now. And I feel like I had like 4,200 before. So I don't feel like I lost a lot. But the difference in the raid last night and in Mythic Plus in general, I mean, it does feel, it feels like I take more damage. And a big part of that is the Will and Acropolis nerf. So that's one thing. But I just, again, I don't like, it's just not a nerf to me. So it's not going to ever make Blood DK, like, I don't think it's going to change either Blood or Brewmaster being the best tanks. But the gap between the top and the bottom is definitely slimmer now, if you ask me. And I'm definitely going to make a full tier list on tanking in the future. But what else? Yeah, the other thing is, you see a Rep Pally in this dungeon. Now, this is, of course, who knows? Maybe it's his key. I don't know anything about the situation. But Rep Pally got a massive AoE buff. And you're going to see other specs like that, similar, like Ellie, or not Ellie. Ellie was in great shape before. Enhancement Shaman. Enhancement Shaman, big buff to AoE, especially to, just all its damage. Rep Pally's probably the one that's most noticeable. Very under-tiered, underrepresented spec. Very, very, very underrepresented. Same with Shadow Priest. Big, big changes that I think are going to go a long way in the Mythic Plus meta. But again, they're just going to bring the bottom up farther to the top. They didn't, they got changes to some of their utility, but it doesn't matter in 5-ans. Now you can't stack two blessings, greater blessings like Kings and Wisdom. You can't put two Kings on the same tank, etc. They changed some things there, but that doesn't really change anything. You know what I mean? They got new talent, but it's for PvP only. So it's like, they didn't really change anything about Ret. They just made him do more AoE damage, and that's great. I'm really happy about that. Am I going to bring Ret to Mythic Plus? No. Get the fuck out of here. I'm not going to bring fucking Ret to Mythic Plus. Like, it's just not going to happen. You know what I mean? They're not better than Demon Hunter. They're not better than Rogue, even though Rogue got massive nerf to, subtlety spec, subtlety spec, however you say it. It's just not. They're never going to be. They don't have the utility. That's the problem. So no matter how much they do, and it was kind of the Windwalker treatment, right? Like in Legion, Windwalker was top tier because it was just better DPS than everyone else. They did not have outstanding utility, although they did, bring some decent utility, some very decent, not great, very decent, mediocre at best mobility. No, not mobility. What the hell? Defense is what I'm trying to say, and above average mobility. So it was like well-rounded class at best, decent, decent at worst. But top tier damage, absolutely unbelievable damage. So even if they did that with Ret, like right now, Ret's looking like a killer, man. They're doing crazy AoE. Well, guess what? There's other classes to do crazy AoE. So let's back off the Ret hype train a bit. Regardless, I'm glad to see that they are buffing underperforming specs like them and Shadow, etc. So yeah, that's pretty much everything. This has been a wild roller coaster of a week so far. I've been extremely sick. This is the most sick I've been in probably over a decade. Really, I was really scared last night. I thought I was going to have to be very seriously, maybe go to hospital or something. I was very sick. But regardless, starting to get a little bit better, but we'll see what happens this weekend. I just want to make this video just to, give you guys a chance to talk about some of this stuff too. I feel like that's one of the best things about the channel is not just me talking about it, but you guys too. So let me know what your thoughts on all this are. I know a lot of you guys are going to have strong opinions, and I'm excited to answer and talk about all of that. So thanks for watching. We'll see you guys in the next one.